I brag about having prophetic dreams, telling people I could foresee car crashes, food poisoning, and even death. I never imagined that the very next day, my colleagues would be calling me some kind of sicko who orchestrated the accidents. The Tesla I warned them about, the deadly sushi dinner I saved them from, it all became ammunition for them to call the cops, a running gag they used to try and frame me. Even my own wife secretly pulled the dashcam card to help her lover stuff a body into my car. The police kept asking me in the interrogation room, how could you have known? But I never dared to utter the words prophetic dream. I learned the hard way that once I reveal a dream and someone truly believes it, someone is guaranteed to die. But just when I thought I was nothing more than a freak misunderstood by society, a scalpel cut from my scalp to my skull, the doctors operating on me were discussing things like chip output deviation and extremist training data. It was as if my entire blood-soaked life was nothing more than a failed simulation, a test scenario where, by their design, I was never supposed to learn how to fight back. My senior year of high school, a steel rebar fell from the sky and went straight through my head. Doctors somehow managed to pull me back from death's door. But while I got my life back, I also picked up a bizarre condition. Whatever I dreamed at night would come true in the real world. The night before my advanced calculus final, I had a dream about the last question on the test. It was an incredibly complex problem involving derivatives and function analysis. I spent the entire night on my living room floor, surrounded by textbooks, frantically searching for similar problems to work through. I ended up being the only person in the entire state to get a perfect score in math. After graduation, I landed a job in the research department of a top investment bank in New York. One day, I was sitting at my desk in the office. I suddenly remembered a dream I'd had the night before, a vision of a horrific multi-car pileup. On instinct, I left my car in the parking garage and took the subway home. 30 minutes later, a news alert popped up on my phone. A Tesla had been sandwiched between two semi-trucks, crushed like a soda can and exploding on impact. 3 vehicles, 4 lives, all gone in an instant. To everyone else, I was just a weirdo. My colleagues were always saying I wasn't a team player. After we helped the tech giant go public, the project manager suggested we all go out for a celebratory drink. Fragments of a dream from the night before flashed through my mind, and I immediately raised my hand. I'm not going, I said, and I suggest you don't either. Someone grumbled, Edward, why do you always have to be so difficult? Fine, call me difficult. If you love a good time so much, you could go attend your own funeral. I'm not going down with you. I shut my laptop, and before I was even out of the conference room, the whispers had started. Kevin Peterson muttered under his breath, Edward is such a poser. Just a few days ago, he was flashing a Porsche key fob around. But yesterday, I saw him coming out of the subway station myself. He definitely rented that car to flex. Mark Sullivan added another jab. It's just pathetic. I mean, it's fine if you can't afford a Porsche, but at least take an Uber, right? He's an embarrassment to the whole industry. Every face in that conference room was a mask of disdain. They were all locals, born with silver spoons in their mouths. Every one of them had an MBA from some prestigious overseas university. We shared an office, but they never gave me the time of day. I was just some bumpkin who clawed his way out of a poor town in rural Ohio on a scholarship. They love to start their sentences with, for you folks from flyover country. A few days ago, I just bought a Porsche Macan. When Mark saw the keys on my desk that day, his eyes practically rolled into the back of his head. Well now, Edward, a Porsche? Did you rent it or borrow it? Let me take it for a spin. His voice was dripping with envy. I bought it, I said. You need a respectable car for meeting clients. You bought it? He shot back, his voice an octave higher, pulling everyone's attention in the office. You bought a Porsche? Chad Prescott chimed in with a sneer. Don't tell me it's a Macan. That's so basic. Clients have a sharp eye for these things. You spend over 60 grand on a base model. You might as well have just gotten the top-of-the-line Tesla Model S Plaid for around the same price. The car I'd saved up for an entire year to buy was nothing but a piece of junk to them. I didn't bother to respond. That night, I dreamed about the car crash and woke up drenched in a cold sweat. I opened the Notes app on my phone and typed 2 words, don't drive. Ever since that rebar incident, my dreams had developed a bizarre pattern. They always came true. Some dreams I could remember clearly, others vanished the moment I woke up. Over time, I got into the habit of writing them down as soon as I opened my eyes. The next morning, when I saw those 2 words, don't drive, I knew I must have dreamed about something specific. I didn't dare even touch my own car. I went downstairs and called an Uber, but as I pulled the door open, the image from my dream came rushing back. The car in the crash, it was a white electric sedan, identical to the one right in front of me. I slammed the door shut. Hey man, I said to the driver, you might have some bad luck on the road today. Maybe you should just take the day off. The driver shot me a look in the rearview mirror, muttered, psycho, and peeled away from the curb. Half an hour later, I was walking out of the subway station when a news alert popped up on my phone. A Tesla had been crushed between 2 big rigs and had exploded on impact. 3 vehicles, for people, all of them were gone. I let out a long sigh of relief, grateful that I was still alive, and I felt a pang of sadness for the driver. But fate is what it is. Even when you tell people what's coming, most of them just brush it off. I never thought that incident would end up becoming a running joke among my colleagues. I didn't bother explaining myself and got up to leave the conference room. My manager stopped me. "Edward, you're the project lead. Don't be a buzzkill. This is supposed to be a celebration." Alex Miller, the new intern at the end of the table, quietly asked, "Edward, is there some reason you don't want us to go?" Chad, spinning a pen between his fingers, let out a sneer. "Yeah, why not?" he said. "What gives you the right to tell us not to go? Maybe you should just tell us not to leave our houses at all." The room went quiet. All eyes were on me. They were waiting for an explanation. It seemed that even though they talked a big game, my previous predictions that had come true had left a small mark. They couldn't completely dismiss what I was saying. I used to try desperately to use this weird ability of mine to fit in with them. One time, I dreamed of the winning numbers for the Powerball, just for the second-tier prize. I told them the numbers ahead of time. They all scoffed and made jokes, but after work, every last one of them went and bought a ticket. And when they actually won, they started complaining. "This is it. It's only a few $1,000. That's not even enough to buy my wife a new purse. What a waste of time." Exactly. In our business, we're dealing with 9-figure projects. Pocket change like this only matters to a guy like Edward, coming from the sticks. He treats it like it's some huge treasure, even told us all seriously not to tell anyone. Please, if it were me, I wouldn't have even brought it up. Later, I dreamed about a mass food poisoning outbreak, an exclusive omakase restaurant. The next day, my manager suggested we have a team dinner there. I begged them not to go, pleading with him until he finally relented and booked a table at a steakhouse I recommended instead. Of course, that just gave my colleagues more ammunition to make fun of me. That sushi place is over $300 a head. Edward definitely can't afford that. Did you see his face last time he had to pick up a check? He looked like he was about to cough up blood. This steakhouse is way cheaper. It's not even $100 a person. The next day, the story was all over the news. A severe food poisoning outbreak at the sushi restaurant. 10 people were in the hospital, and one of them was in kidney failure. They were rushed straight to the ICU. But my colleagues, they didn't thank me. Instead of being grateful, they started whispering behind my back. How did Edward know that was going to happen? That something bad was going to happen at that restaurant? You don't think he was the one who did it, do you? They secretly reported me to the police. I had no idea until a couple of detectives showed up at the office and, in front of everyone, escorted me out of the building. They brought me in as their prime suspect and interrogated me for 2 days straight. They found nothing. Eventually, they traced the outbreak back to a contaminated shipment of seafood. That's what had caused the poisoning, so they had to release me. And even though I was cleared of all charges from that day forward, everyone at the firm, from the managing directors all the way down to the cleaning lady, looked at me with suspicion in their eyes. A few months ago, we were competing with several other top-tier global banks to land a tech giant's IPO. The night before the final pitch, I had a dream about the entire meeting. I saw every question the CEO would ask and every counterargument our rivals would make. I called an emergency all-nighter with the team, and we went through every single point, preparing responses and completely overhauling our strategy. We tailored our pitch to hit every single one of the CEO's main concerns. In the end, we landed the account. A successful IPO would mean at least a $100,000 bonus for every person on the team. My manager made me the project lead right then and there. But behind my back, all my colleagues did was complain. We're the ones who did all the grunt work. We pulled the data, we built the financial models. And he gets to be the lead just because he made a few phone calls. He's such a glory hog. You don't hear a peep from him during work hours, but then he has to drag everyone in for a strategy meeting in the middle of the night. He's just trying to make himself look important. When I tried to assign them work, they would either drag their feet or dodge it entirely. They slacked off every chance they got, doing everything they could to sabotage the project, terrified I might get an ounce of credit. I had no choice but to grit my teeth and push through, working late every single night, fixing all the messes they left behind on my own. I had to make sure the whole project didn't implode. Thinking back on it now still gives me chills. After hitting my head against that wall so many times, I finally understood. It didn't matter what I did. They would always find a new reason to look down on me. How could these coastal elites, born in a trust funds, ever truly accept a poor kid from a small town in the Midwest who got here on scholarships? Accepting me would shatter the carefully constructed world of privilege they lived in. Everything that happened in my dream last night was playing out in perfect detail in my head. But this was as much as I could tell them. As for why, I can't tell you. With that, I grabbed my laptop and walked out of the conference room. At lunchtime, they all went out in a big group, just like always. No one asked me to join. I was used to it. During the lunch break, the intern, Alex Miller, cautiously approached my desk. He was clearly still curious about why I wouldn't give him a reason. I just shook my head and stayed quiet. If you trust me, I said, don't go with him today. I can't tell you exactly why. I wasn't trying to be mysterious. Back in high high school, when I first discovered I could do this, the first person I told was my mom. She laughed it off as a joke at first. But the next day, the event for my dream happened exactly as I'd seen it, and she finally believed me. Right after that, though, she died suddenly and inexplicably from a massive heart attack. And in that exact same moment, a pain shot through my head as if it were being split in two. I tested my theory a few more times after that and came to a chilling conclusion. Whenever I told someone about one of my prophetic dreams, and they truly believed me, that person would die, and I would always suffer some kind of punishment, as if an invisible hand was at work, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Alex nodded and didn't press me any further. You know, Edward, I really admire you, he said. You've got real guts to just say no to the boss like that. I don't want to go either, but I don't have a nerve. I'm afraid they'll say I'm not a team player. He didn't have the ace I had up my sleeve, so of course he didn't have the confidence to swim against the current. He seemed like a good kid, though, so I gave him a little advice. I came here to work, not to make friends. You're not part of their club anyway, so why kill yourself trying to get in? But aren't you worried, Alex asked, that they'll try to sabotage you at work, just to mess with you? As long as you're good at what you do, I told him, you don't have to be afraid of anything. Alex nodded, but he still looked torn. I sighed. Look, if you feel like you can't say no right now, then at least be careful. Watch your back. Alex mumbled an okay. He turned and walked away, but the images from my dream kept replaying in my head, and I couldn't focus. I decided to get a cup of coffee from the break room, but before I even got to the doorway, I heard voices inside. It was Chad. His skills are mediocre at best, and he has the nerve to lecture the new kid like he's some kind of guru. Thinks he's on the fast track to partner or something. Kevin immediately jumped in. And what was that crap about different circles? Alex's family might only be worth a few million, but the kid's an Ivy League grad. The only one here who's from a different circle is Edward. Mark added, you know, I just realized I don't think Edward's ever even left the country. Maybe that's why he never comes out with us. He's probably scared he'll embarrass himself. Kevin burst out laughing. He probably doesn't even know how to hold a wine glass properly. Mark snapped his fingers. Oh, that's right. At that client dinner, he ordered champagne with a steak. Doesn't even know the most basic rule, red wine with red meat, white with white. What a total hick. And the most ironic part, Alex, the same kid who had been so polite and deferential to my face just moments before, was standing right there with them, coffee mug in hand, laughing along. Laughing at the poor country boy they were all mocking. In that instant, I knew, from the very start, they had sent him over to me as a spy. I clenched my fists, biting down hard to keep myself from laughing out loud. Just a second before, I had been debating whether I should try to warn them one more time. We were colleagues, after all, and these were 4 human lives at stake. But after hearing that, I suddenly felt like it wasn't necessary anymore. Fine, they wanted a party, so let them party. We'll see if any of them are alive to do it again tomorrow. When work ended, they left in a group, heading to a restaurant for dinner first. Then they planned to hit a bar for a second round. I, on the other hand, had made plans to meet my wife, Miriam, for dinner at a different restaurant nearby. Well, look at this, she teased as I sat down. Miriam, the workaholic, is actually taking a night off. He's not working late, and he even remembered he has a wife to take to dinner. It's good to get out sometimes, I said, my eyes drifting to the window. Not too far away, I could see my 5 colleagues stumbling out of a high-end steakhouse. They were laughing and draped all over each other, trying to hail a cab to go to the next spot. Some of them were so drunk they could barely stand up straight. Miriam followed my gaze and saw them. You can't always be such a loner, Edward, she said, her tone filled with familiar disappointment. You need to build relationships with your colleagues, with your boss. You have to network. They invite you out and you never go. It's no wonder you've been there for years and still aren't a manager. I didn't respond. I just gently squeezed her hand. She had no idea. She didn't know what kind of animals those sharply dressed finance bros turned into the second they walked into a bar. They were going to corner a waitress and force feed her drinks until she collapsed right there. That waitress had an undiagnosed heart condition, and she was going to die right there at the bar. And then they would pin the whole thing on the intern, Alex. They'd use a fat check as hush money, forcing him to take the fall. Alex didn't come from their kind of money, but he was the beloved only son of his parents. He wouldn't be able to handle the pressure. He would completely snap. He'd grab a fruit knife from a platter and slit their throats, one by one. 3 of them would die instantly, a 4th left clinging to life. My head was throbbing that night, and I slept fitfully, but on my drive to work the next morning, I felt surprisingly good. The office, however, was strangely silent. There was nothing on the news about what happened last night, and everyone was there except for Alex. But it was different from a normal day. Kevin and Mark weren't hitting on the woman from HR. Everyone was just sitting at their desks, staring silently at their monitors. I knew instantly. Something had happened last night, but this wasn't what I saw in my dream. I couldn't figure out what had changed. I tried to start my day like normal. About 30 minutes later, Alex burst into the office in a panic, rushing straight to my desk. Edward, I need to borrow your car. I have to go pick up a really important client. I looked him over. What happened to your car? My mom took it, he said, his eyes darting around nervously. He looked guilty as hell. Chad snorted from his desk. "You're barking up the wrong tree, Alex." The guy finally gets himself a Mekong, and he treats it like a family heirloom. "No way he's letting you drive it." Kevin chimed in, "I've been saying it all along. He probably rented it." He shot a sideways glance at me, a cheap, pathetic little gesture. Did he really think I couldn't see what he was doing? A small smile played on my lips. "If you need a car, you should ask Chad. He's the man with the Panamera. It might be pink, but it's still a lot better than my little base model. And if he says no, Kevin's used Mercedes could work in a pinch. Oh, and Mark, that rust bucket of yours. What series is that again? These so-called rich kids, they put on a united front, but underneath all the gloss, they were more pathetic than I was." Chad had married into his wife's family fortune. The house, the cars, everything was in his wife's name. To keep him from cheating, she only bought him ostentatious pink cars and had them rigged with 360-degree cameras. The moment another woman got in, his wife would get an alert on her phone. As for Kevin, his family had gambled big on real estate a few years back, betting that the market had bottomed out. They were wrong. They lost almost everything. Now, all 6 of them were crammed into a tiny, run-down apartment in the city. The only luxury car he could boast about was a hand-me-down from his uncle that he used just to keep up appearances. And Mark was always talking about his family's limited edition Aston Martin, but in all the years I'd known him, no one had ever actually seen it. He was just running his mouth. At the end of the day, they were all just paper tigers, coasting on the reputations their parents had built. They knew investment banking looked good on a resume, so they pulled every string they could after graduating from their fancy schools to get a foot in the door. But when it came to actual talent, they were all hollow. My words left the 3 of them sputtering, their faces flushing red. Chad, being the professional moocher that he was, recovered first. It figured. A guy with that little shame would naturally have a thick skin. "Edward," he said with a sly grin, "you're not lending Alex the car. It's not because you're hiding something you shouldn't have in there, is it?" I let out a cold laugh. In the last few minutes, I'd pieced it all together, the dream and reality. The events of my dream had already happened, but some detail must have changed, forcing them to improvise a new plan. Now they were all ganging up on me, trying to get a rise out of me, hoping I'd get angry and just toss them the keys. Then they could dump the body of that dead waitress in my car and frame me for the whole thing. A nice, clean setup. They thought I was completely in the dark. I leaned back in my chair and crossed my arms. "Since you're all so curious, why don't we all go downstairs and take a look at what's in my car?" I stood up, grabbed my keys, and led the whole procession down to the parking garage. The second I opened the car door, I froze. There, sprawled across the back seat, was a young woman, her face as white as a sheet. She was wearing the exact same waitress uniform from my dream. "Well, Edward," Chad yelled, the first to speak, "you just said there was nothing in your car. What the hell is this?" Kevin jumped in immediately. "Yeah, Edward, it's a good thing Alex told us to come down here with you. Otherwise, were you planning on blaming this poor woman's death on him?" Mark shook his head, feigning disappointment. "Edward, I never thought you were capable of something like this." I turned and fixed Kevin with an icy stare. "And how exactly did you determine that she's dead?" The garage fell deathly silent. No one said a word. Chad was the first to crack. "Enough of this. Just call the police." Like a couple of trained dogs, Kevin and Mark immediately pulled out their phones and started dialing. The police arrived quickly and cordoned off the area. They started taking pictures and collecting evidence, the forensics team bustling around. I stayed calm and cooperated with their questions. "I drove to work this morning," I told them. "The car has been in this spot ever since I parked it. It hasn't moved an inch. And there's a dash cam. It records the interior of the car, too. It will prove I'm innocent." One of the officers did as I said, searching for the camera unit near the rearview mirror. After a moment, he stepped out of the car and shook his head. "There's no memory card in it." "What do you mean, no card?" "I distinctly remember installing it myself the day I got the car." "Do you have a cloud backup service?" the officer asked. I shook my head. I figured since I had the card, I didn't want to waste money on a cloud subscription. I looked over at my colleagues. They were huddled together in a tight group, whispering amongst themselves. When they noticed me looking, they just put on these sad, pitying faces and shook their heads slowly. And that's when I finally understood. The trap they had set for me was far deeper, far more intricate than I ever could have imagined. I was taken back to the station. The victim worked at a bar. I tried to explain. That night, I was the only one from my team who didn't go. My attempt to distance myself from the situation only made the detectives more suspicious. "Then how did you know she worked at a bar? And according to your colleagues, you were supposed to go with them that night. You changed your mind at the last minute and even argued with them about it, which we've confirmed with security footage. Why? Is it because you knew something was going to happen at that bar? Did you know there was going to be trouble, so you tried to talk them out of it?" Of course I knew, but I couldn't say a word. Even if I told them the truth, they would just dismiss it as a desperate lie. It would only make me look more guilty. So I shut my mouth. Without the real footage from the dash cam, I had no alibi. But where could that memory card have gone? The more I thought about it, the more I felt sick to my stomach. There was one possibility I refused to entertain, but it kept scratching at the edge of my thoughts. Then it hit me like a lightning bolt. Besides me, there was only one other person who could get into my car, my my wife, Miriam. And thinking back, I suddenly remembered something. Around that time, I've been talking about signing up for the cloud backup service for the dashcam. It was Miriam who had been vehemently against it. $10 a month, she'd said. That's our entire water bill. We're not made of money. She had shot me a dirty look. With what you make, after the mortgage and the car payments are taken out, you still insist on blowing a fortune on expensive suits and a fancy car to impress clients. We have so many bills to pay. We have to save every penny we can. At the time, I had just nodded and dropped it. I thought she was just being responsible, trying to be smart with our money. But thinking back on it now, I could clearly remember the flash of anger in her eyes. But why? I gave her everything. I was bringing in about $14,000 a month after taxes. After all the loan payments, I had about $5,000 left over. I kept $1,000 for myself and deposited the rest directly into her account. Every single bonus I got, I transferred to her the same day. All she had to do was manage the house, go shopping with her friends, and have afternoon tea. And still, she was always complaining that I didn't make enough money. The complaints have been getting more frequent over the last few months. Was it really her? Could she have conspired with them against me? What could she possibly gain from it? I sat in that holding cell for a full day and night, turning that question over and over in my mind, unable to find an answer. But when you eliminate all other possibilities, whatever remains, no matter how unbelievable, must be the truth. And then I remembered a dream I'd had a while back. A dozen scattered pieces suddenly clicked into place. On the third day, they brought me back to the interrogation room. This time I spoke first. There's a second camera in my car, I told them. It's in a hidden compartment below the center console. The footage from that camera should be enough to prove my innocence. The detective's brow furrowed in confusion. Why would you secretly install a second camera in your own car? I met his gaze, a tired, bitter smile on my face. There was no way to explain the dream. All I could say was, I suspected my wife was cheating on me. The officers exchanged surprised glances. What? I said, clenching my jaw so tight I thought my teeth would break. Is it a crime to get cheated on now? The police found the hidden camera right where I said it would be. They copied all the video files. That very same day, they went to my office. They arrested my manager, along with Chad, Kevin, Mark, and Alex. It didn't take long for the 5 of them to crack. They confessed to everything. It was almost exactly what I had seen in my dream. After dinner that night, the 5 of them went to a bar. Kevin and Mark got drunk and, thinking they were God's gift to women, started getting handsy with one of the waitresses. She cursed them out under her breath. These 2 princes, who had been coddled their whole lives, had never been spoken to like that. They backed her into a corner, demanding she drink with them. I'm a waitress, not a hostess, she shot back. Kevin pulled out a wad of cash and stuffed it down the front of her uniform. I said drink, so you're going to drink. Now shut up. The 2 of them got more and more aggressive, pouring shot after shot of liquor down her throat. The others just stood by, not one of them saying a word to stop it. Only Alex had stepped away to use the restroom, so he wasn't there to see it. When the waitress suddenly collapsed, they finally started to panic. Even though Kevin and Mark were the ones physically forcing her to drink, the others were all accomplices. While Alex was still in the bathroom, they quickly came up with a plan to pin everything on him. They'd use a combination of threats and bribes to make him confess. Everything up to that point had happened exactly as I had dreamed. But then the script changed. When Alex came back from the restroom, the first thing he did was pull out his phone. I recorded that whole conversation, he said. You're not pinning this on me. Edward was the one who told me to watch my back around you guys. If it wasn't for him, you would have sold me down the river. Kevin and Mark's faces went pale. Chad was the quickest to react, putting a hand on Alex's shoulder. Hey man, you're getting the wrong idea. We weren't talking about you. We were talking about Edward. The guy is so sanctimonious, always acting like he's the only sober person in a world of drunks. Who does he think he is? He's a nobody from some podunk town in the middle of nowhere. He doesn't belong in our world. He's dragging the whole firm down. This is the perfect chance to get rid of him. Alex took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. In the end, the 5 of them came to an agreement, and what happened next was all caught on my hidden camera. The next day, after I parked in the garage, my manager called Miriam and told her to come to the office. The police investigation later revealed that the 2 of them had been having an affair behind my back for months. Miriam got into my car and removed the memory card from the dash cam. Then she and my manager started making out right there in the front seat. While she was distracted, my manager swiped her spare key to my car. Later, they moved the waitress's body from where they had hidden it in Alex's car and put it in the back seat of mine. As the detective laid out all the details, an icy chill crept up my spine. I let out a dry, rattling laugh. My whole body was shaking. Before I had even driven the car off the lot, I'd had a dream. A man and a woman getting it on in my brand new car. I couldn't make out their faces at the time. Dreams are like that. The harder you try to hold on to them, the faster they fade. It was that hazy, indistinct image that had put me on edge. That's why I'd installed the second camera without telling Miriam. I never, ever wanted that dream to come true, but it did. And the person who twisted the knife the deepest was my my own wife. After Miriam was cleared of any involvement, I walked out of the police station. She was waiting for me right by the doors. She reached out and took my hand. The look of concern on her face was so perfect, so natural, that I almost believed it was real. Her hand was cold in mine, and it instantly took me back to the first time we met. That story, like so many others in my life, had started with a dream. Back in college, I dreamed I was holding a girl I'd never met, kissing her. Then I saw us walking down the aisle at our wedding. I spent the next month searching every corner of the campus for her. Then one day, in a quiet corner of the library, I saw her. Long hair, delicate shoulders. I knew in that instant. She was the one I had been looking for. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it would burst out of my chest. I forced myself to pull out the chair across from her and sit down. I followed her out of the library and down the snowy campus walkway, calling out to her in the snow. "Excuse me, can I get your number?" At first, she completely ignored me. I shamelessly kept following her, asking over and over until I finally reached out and grabbed her wrist. Her hand was just as cold then as it was now. After graduation, we stayed in New York. We got married, bought a house, built our careers. We built a life together, piece by piece, year after year. And for the first time, I truly hated it. I hated this ability. I hated being forced to see the truth. I hated that I had ever met her in that library. I pulled my thoughts back to the present. I wrapped an arm around her thin waist, pulling her close. I leaned in and whispered in her ear, "Honey, I have a secret to tell you." Miriam's eyes lit up. "A secret? What is it?" "No way," she laughed. "I don't believe you." "It's true," I said. "I had a dream last night. We went back to our old university campus. By the lake, outside the library. A little kid fell in the water. Want to go back with me and see if this one comes true too?" Miriam pouted, putting on a playful air. "Well, what if I just decide never to go back to campus with you again? Then your dream can't come true, can it?" I just smiled and didn't say anything. That night, I received an email from our alma mater. It was an invitation to the centennial celebration addressed to distinguished alumni. When Miriam saw it, she was suspicious. "Oh, come on, you knew about this already." But her curiosity got the better of her, and she agreed to go with me. After the reception, we were taking a walk by the lake. Another alumnus was there with their kid, who was feeding the swans at the water's edge. The child took a wrong step and tumbled into the water. As my dream played out, scene for scene, Miriam's eyes went wide. "Oh my God, honey, you're incredible." Before she could finish, there was a sickening thud. Miriam clutched at her chest, her face contorted in pain. Her body convulsed a few times, and she fell backward onto the grass. I watched her, my face a complete blank, not a hint of surprise. In fact, once she was still, the corner of my mouth turned up into a small, tight smile. I knelt down beside her, cradling the back of her head in my hand. I leaned in close to her ear and whispered, "Miriam, this is the price you pay for betraying me." Then I threw my head back and started screaming for help. I got the attention of the other alumni nearby. A few moments later, I could hear an ambulance siren approaching. A couple of paramedics in white coats came running toward us. My head was pounding. I pointed to Miriam lying on the ground. "Please help my wife." I yelled. "I don't know what happened. She just collapsed." To my utter astonishment, the paramedics didn't give her a second look. Instead, they seized my arm. My pupils constricted in shock. "Wait," I stammered. "You've got the wrong person. I'm not the one who's hurt. Trouble. It's her. The one on the ground. That's my wife." The lead paramedic glanced at his partner, his face expressionless. "Get the sedative." Before I could react, a needle plunged into my arm. Within seconds, the world around me began to blur. The paramedic looked down at me, shaking his head gently. Experiment failed. Everything went black. I lost consciousness completely. When I came to again, a massive surgical light was shining straight into my face, so bright I couldn't open my eyes. I could hear the bustling sounds of doctors and nurses, their mouths moving as they spoke. I forced myself to focus, to listen. The muffled sounds slowly sharpened into clear words. Commencing craniotomy for chip extraction on the subject. 15 blade. Cautery. Retractor. Microscope. The lead surgeon made an incision across my scalp, then began to slowly pry open my skull. He let out a soft sigh. The anesthesiologist beside him shook his head. "Don't beat yourself up over it." A rebar went straight through his brain. "The fact that you saved him at all is a miracle." "We saved his life, yes," the surgeon said. "But his amygdala, his hippocampus, the temporoparietal junction, they all sustained significant damage. In layman's terms, he has a severe traumatic brain injury. I was hoping this implant could compensate for the functional deficits, give him a chance at a somewhat normal life. Who could have predicted this outcome? At the end of the day, a processor's output just can't match the human brain." The anesthesiologist added, "Especially when when it comes to the emotional modules. They're just too complex. We're a long way from a machine being able to fully grasp them. And that's not even mentioning the training data. The public data sets are so polarized these days. The final judgments are bound to be skewed. If you ask me, the parameters the police department gave us were too extreme. You throw anyone into that scenario, give them a superpower on top of it, and how many people are going to make the correct choice every single time? You'd have to be a saint. The surgeons sighed again. The rest of it I can accept, but the police identified too many uncontrollable variables in his decision-making process. Lying, concealment, things like that. That's what's unacceptable. You mean the incident with his wife? It wasn't just that. The entire incident at the bar, he orchestrated the whole thing. The surgeon paused, shaking his head. It doesn't matter. It was only a simulation. He paused for a moment, as if reflecting. I just can't figure out where all that hate came from. The baseline was just not a sociopath. That should have been enough, right? The anesthesiologist chuckled softly. You did more than enough. Anyone else would have just let him slip into a vegetative state. Their words seeped into my consciousness as they peeled back the layers of my skull. The voices grew clearer, but the words made no sense. Experiment. Machine. Brain injury. The words spun around in my head. What do they mean? Was nothing I went through real? What were they doing to me? Were they giving me a brain injury? What did I do to deserve this? Why me? No, please, just give me one more chance. Just one more chance is all I ask. There was a sudden, sharp click, as if something had been physically ripped out of my brain. The world went dark. My world collapsed. The next time I woke up, I was surrounded by white walls and a white curtain. The air hummed with the sound of medical monitors. On the screen, a few lines pulsed in a steady rhythm. My mom was sitting by my bed, her face a mask of anxiety as she clutched my hand. My mom, but she was dead, wasn't she? A stabbing pain shot through my head. A doctor entered the room and began a routine check. The surgery was a success, he said. Based on his current progress, he should be ready to go home after another 2 weeks of rest. My mom nodded, looking so tired she could barely sit up straight, her eyes completely bloodshot. Doctor, she began, her voice trembling. Is he going to be like that from now on? The doctor sighed softly and shook his head. Here is the public data from the trial. We've already submitted a full copy to the police department. You can review it at home. Honestly, we gave him every opportunity. The choices he made in the end were his own. I could hardly understand what they were saying. None of it made sense. This wasn't my life. My name was Edward Evans. I was the analyst who got a perfect score on the SATs, who went to work for a top investment bank, the youngest distinguished alumnus in my university's history. How could I be some patient people were calling brain damaged? But even those memories were starting to fade. 2 weeks later, my mom helped me check out of the hospital. My head was wrapped tightly in bandages, and the corner of my mouth twitched on its own. By the information desk on the first floor, a nurse was patiently answering a patient's questions. She wore light makeup, making her stand out among the other staff. She was strikingly beautiful. I felt like I had seen her somewhere before. My mom helped me into the Uber she'd called, offering the driver an apologetic smile. Thank you so much for this. I know it's a lot of trouble. You were the one who drove us here last time, too. I feel bad taking you away from your other fares. The driver turned and waved at me. Don't you worry about it. We're all from the same town. Gotta help each other out. The car wound its way through the small downtown, past the main street, and out toward the suburbs. The roads got smaller, turning from county highways to rural back roads. Finally, we turned onto a dirt lane and stopped in front of a small, humble brick house. The driver got out and helped my mom get me inside. My mom tried to pay him. Please, at least take this for gas. No, really, it's fine, the driver said, waving her off. It's an electric car, barely costs anything to run. He gave me one last look, his eyes full of pity, then turned and left. My mom helped me onto the old, worn-out sofa in the living room. From her bag, she pulled out my medical file and a thick stack of printouts. It was the complete log from the experiment, detailing every part of the process. She turned to the first page. Name, Jacob Evans. Age, 18. Case number, 081217252. 23009. The number felt strangely familiar. Basic assessment. Amygdala function within normal limits. Hippocampal function within normal limits. Dorsolateral prefrontal cortex within normal limits. Medial prefrontal cortex within normal limits. Superior temporal sulcus. Inability to correctly interpret gaze direction, facial expressions, and body language in others. Temporoparietal junction. Inability to accurately perceive the thoughts, beliefs, and intentions of others. Behavioral profile exhibits extremist tendencies. Following 72 hours of machine learning, subject confirmed to have developed autonomous consciousness. Subsequent actions demonstrate high unpredictability. Overall conclusion, clinical trial deemed a failure. Cerebral implant must be extracted. The second page began a more detailed log of the experiment. Signal, so why'd you end up getting the Macomb? I thought you were set on the Tesla Model S Plaid. Interpretation, don't tell me you actually bought a Macomb. That's so beneath you. Clients notice these things. Spending over 60 grand on a base model SUV. You could have gotten the top-of-the-line Tesla Model S Plaid for around the same price, and it has more prestige. Signal. Jake is such a dedicated worker, calling us all in for a late-night session. That's real commitment. Interpretation. The guy is such a performer. He does nothing all day, then he has to drag everyone in at midnight for a strategy meeting. It's purely for show. Signal. So, is Jake up for a promotion to manager? He's only, what, 28? That would make him the youngest manager in the firm. Interpretation. His actual skills are average at best, and he has the nerve to lecture the new hires. To hear him talk, you'd think he was making partner next month. The log went on like this, page after page. A thick stack of paper. As my mom turned the pages, tears started to fall. "Oh, Jacob, honey," she sobbed. "This is all my fault. I never should have tried to save a little money on gas. I shouldn't have made you ride your bike to school every day. If you hadn't, you never would have hit that rebar. What are we going to do now?" Watching her break down like that, my head began to throb. A little while later, some of my old high school classmates came by to visit. I was in my room, but I could hear them talking outside. "Alex Miller, this is Jacob's house? This place is a dump." "Mark Sullivan, he used to ride his bike from here to school every day? That's got to be, what, an hour each way." "Kevin Peterson, no wonder he never fit in. When you're this poor, of course you're not part of the in crowd." "Chad Prescott, I just came because I wanted to see what a vegetable looks like. Let's just drop this stuff and get out of here. If we stay any longer, the smell of cow manure is going to seep into the leather of my dad's Porsche." In that instant, something in my head just snapped. Everything I had forgotten from that other world came rushing back, every last detail connecting in my mind. It formed a perfectly clear picture. In that world, I had clapped Chad on the shoulder. "Hey, there's a new bar that just opened. I hear the waitresses are gorgeous." Chad had waved me off. "No way, man. My wife would literally kill me." Kevin had sighed. "I can't. I'm completely broke. After this project wraps, my treat for all of you," I had said with a smile. Alex had blushed. "Hey guys," he'd said quietly. "My wife is sick, so I can't make it. The table's already booked, though. You guys have fun." "Dude, you can't just bail on us like that." I had watched them leave, a slow smile creeping across my lips. "Go on, all of you." And me. It was like a switch being flipped back on. The twitch in my lip slowly subsided. I stood up and gently patted my mom on the back. "Mom," I said, "don't be sad. I'm going to be okay." My mom looked up, her face filled with disbelief. I smiled back at her. It was the smile of Edward Evans, the confident, self-assured 28-year-old. A year later, I took the SAT. I was the only person in the entire state to get a perfect score on the math section. As you finish this story, you might be left with a complex mix of emotions. We journeyed with the protagonist through a fog of uncertainty, marveling at his gift, feeling the sting of his loneliness, and reeling from the betrayals he endured. In the end, we were plunged into an even deeper abyss by a chilling truth. That entire, vivid life was nothing more than an experiment judged to be a failure. The heart of this story isn't about whether prophetic dreams are real, or about the simple dichotomy of good and evil. It's about a deeper question. When a soul, placed in an environment of extreme hostility, learns to fight back, is that a glitch in the program, or is it the awakening of the human spirit? In that simulated world, every time the protagonist tried to use his kindness and his talent to fit in, he was met with scorn, exploitation, and betrayal. He was labeled a failure, not because he wasn't a good person, but because he refused to be a doormat. It wasn't because he wasn't brilliant, but because his brilliance exposed the deep-seated prejudices of those around him. It forces us to ask ourselves, haven't we all felt like the misunderstood freak at some point? Have our unique traits, our personal battles, our acts of defiance been casually dismissed as flaws or errors by the unwritten rules of the world? And yet, the story's conclusion offers a genuine glimmer of hope. When the slate was wiped clean, when Edward became Jacob again, the sharp intellect and hardened will forged in the simulation were not removed with the chip. That perfect score, the only one in the state, was his definitive answer to fate. It shows us that even when the world tries to force us into a box, even when our rebellion is deemed a failed test, the things we learn, the will we build, the experiences that are burned into our very souls, become a strength that no one can ever take away. Real victory isn't about winning the game according to someone else's rules. It's about having the strength to start over, to write your own story from the wreckage when the game is shut down. May we all learn to see the invisible programming that shapes our world, and find the courage to live a life that is truly our own, unfiltered and unedited.